So over the years, I've had some interesting cases. I had this one case. This fellow was incarcerated. In his previous life, before he was locked up, he was a butcher, meat cutter. And that was his nickname in prison, the Butcher. He gets wind that his girlfriend is fooling around with this other guy that he knows. And he promises himself he's going to take care of this. And he gets out, and he winds up murdering this guy.
Murders the guy.
The guy who is fooling with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
The girlfriend, as I recall, goes to the decedent's home and finds the butcher, who sticks a gun in her face and tells her to get the hell out of there. She gets upset and I guess does what any normal person would do if somebody stuck a gun in their face, calls the cops. The cops show up and they find they're in the middle of trying to dispose of the body. The butcher, true to form, has dismembered the body. They had tried to put some of the remains down the kitchen garbage disposal, but that kind of jammed up the works. And then they moved on to some more serious efforts. They put the remains of the body in a bathtub, went out and bought a 55-gallon drum of sulfuric acid, and tried to dissolve the body in the acid. And as I tell people, anybody who's had the slightest amount of chemistry knows that they should have used some basic alkaline lye or something like that. Acid, all they succeeded in doing was making a lot of tallow, a big ring around the bathtub, should I say.
Wow. And you say they are doing this, the guy and the girlfriend?
No, the guy and his co-conspirator.
Oh, okay.
The girlfriend is not in the picture at all.
Okay.
So anyway, they arrest him and everything, and we're now months down the road, and we're getting ready to go to trial. And we're doing a pre-trial discussion with the detectives and the district attorney, and the DA, who I happen to know pretty well. We're sitting around blue skying, and he says to me, "You know what would really be helpful in this case? If you went to the morgue and picked up an unclaimed body and tried to reproduce what happens when you try to dissolve a body in sulfuric acid." And I looked at him and I said, "Are you effing out of your mind? You'll have the jury throwing up in the jury box or looking at you like you've lost it." He says, well, what can we do? So I said, well, why don't we try this with some pork? It's proteins, it's...
Pig DNA, very similar to human DNA.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought nothing more of it. A couple of days later, I'm minding my business in the lab, and a couple of homicide detectives come waltzing into the lab. One of them has a piece of butcher paper over his shoulder. They had just come from Vernon, meat packing capital of Southern California, with a big chunk of pig leg over his shoulder, like 50 pounds of pig, and they go thump onto the laboratory bench, and I kind of look at them puzzling, and what's going on? He says, the DA said you wanted this.
He took you seriously.
Yeah, he took me seriously. So I said, oh, God.
So what was the result of that?
So the result is I'm thinking to myself, this is really weird. I've taken all kinds of chemistry classes in college and graduate school. I've never had to do this before. So let's go back to first principles. So I go to the laboratory's toolbox, I take out a hacksaw, and I start cutting steaks. And I put some of this meat into a large beaker, glub, 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 goes the sulfuric acid. Let it sit around for a couple of days, and as I had predicted, even before I did this, nothing much happened. I have no recollection of testifying about this particular aspect of the crime when I went to court to testify. However, the two guys were convicted of first-degree murder. So that was
Wow.
one of my weirder cases.